Hello learners, welcome back to Constant Learners, and in this video we are starting with the file processing system and its disadvantages. Have you ever wondered how data was managed before modern databases? Why did we even need databases in the first place? Well, today we are going to explore the file processing system, its drawbacks, and why database management system, that is DBMS, became the better solution. So stay with me till the end. First, let's start with what is FPS or file processing system. Now, before the databases, organizations used the file processing system to store and manage the data. Now, in this system, data is stored in individual files, just like the folders that we have to arrange the papers, but this was on the computer, right? On computer, like normally when we are storing any kind of files, whether it is the pictures or the PDF files or Word files, we are storing them inside some kind of folders, right? So these are all files, the PDFs, the Word files, these are all files. So in this system, the file processing system, the data is stored in individual files like text files, then spreadsheets or binary files, and each department maintains its own set of files. To understand in simple words, the Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel are all files as we just discussed. In a company, let's say we have the employee details, which might be stored in one file, then salaries of those employees might be stored in another file, and attendance records are stored in a separate spreadsheet. And each file is managed by a different program, making data retrieval and management complex and time consuming. So the file processing system makes the data retrieval and managing the files very complex and time consuming. Now, while this system worked initially, it had major drawbacks that made it inefficient over time, because earlier the data was also less, and so it was working somehow. There were drawbacks, but it was working. But nowadays there's huge quantities of data that's being generated per second. So storing this data and managing this data in the file system is impossible, right? Because data is available in different formats and storing everything together makes it difficult to extract the required information. And we have to extract the information because that is the basis of so many businesses that are working in today's times. If we don't have the information, then the businesses will see a major fall, which we do not want, right? And the entire, let's say the system of the world is working on the generation of data, extracting information from the data, and then using this information to, let's say, generate new data, right? Now let's go through these drawbacks one by one. First one is data redundancy and inconsistency. Now, one of the biggest issues with the file processing system was data redundancy, meaning the same data was stored in multiple files. See, this is important. Same data is being stored in multiple files. For example, employee information might be stored in both the HR and the finance department's files, right? So there's repetition of data. It is inconvenient because one person will go to one place to fetch the data, other person will go to other place to fetch the data. And if, God forbid, we have forgotten to update one file and we've updated some information in the other file, then there's inconsistency in the data, right? So if one file was updated but the other wasn't, then it leads to data inconsistency, creating conflicting versions of the same data, means the different versions of the same data. Now, how is this issue resolved in terms of database management system? See, DBMS solves this issue by storing data in a single centralized database, ensuring consistency across all departments. We build one database pertaining to one company, and inside that database, all the data that is stored is linked with one another. right? We've already discussed this in detail in a lot of videos when we started understanding what is database and database management system and how it works, right? So if the data is being stored in the tables, then every table is connected to some other table so that the data can be linked with one another. Then next drawback is lack of data integrity. Since there were no strict rules for data entry, incorrect values could be stored, right? There are no rules. Anyone is updating any file, or maybe the person who is responsible for one particular file will update that file. But what about the other files that also have the similar information or the linked information? Then in that case, there is lack of data integrity, because let's say the HR has one file and the finance department has the other file. Now for one employee, his phone number has changed. Now the finance department has changed the number, because finance is money and we all want to go after money. Let's say that employee went to the finance department and he got his number changed, but he forgot to go to the HR department. Now in this case, there's lack of data integrity, because with the finance department the number is different and with the HR department the number is entirely different, right? Or imagine storing a negative salary by mistake. Unlike modern databases, file processing system didn't have data validation, right? Data validation enforces rules and constraints to ensure only correct and meaningful data is stored. We've already discussed the data integrity and constraints thing in the video, in a separate video. I'm going to link that above as well as in the description, right? So DBMS solves this issue by enforcing data integrity and constraints. How? Let's say in a database, you can set a rule that prevents negative values in the salary column. You can put that constraint that negative numbers are not allowed in this particular column, and it will take care of it. So even if by mistake you put a minus sign there, it's not going to accept the value. It ensures that all salaries are valid. Or we can set a rule that names can only accept characters and not integers. In that case, even if by mistake an integer has been added to someone's name, it's not going to accept that value, because we've set that constraint that this can only take characters and not integers. So that is how DBMS solves this issue, which is not possible in the file processing system. Third one is difficulty in data access. Retrieving specific information from file processing system was difficult because there was no standard query language like SQL. If you needed to find all employees earning above a certain salary, you had to either search manually or write a separate program to extract that data, depending on what kind of file it is, right? Which is extremely time consuming, right? So it's very difficult to access a particular data in the file processing system. However, in database management system, this issue is resolved by using a proper language to query the databases, which made data retrieval extremely swift, right? We can just write a query in structured query language. If it is an SQL database, then we can just write a query and access the desired information, right? Next drawback is limited data sharing. Now, each department managed its own files, making data sharing complicated. If HR updated an employee's detail, finance wouldn't know unless they manually checked or they updated their own records. This we have just discussed, and thus the data sharing was limited or difficult. In DBMS, allows multiple users and departments to access and update data in real time, ensuring smooth collaboration, but depending upon the user access. It depends upon how much access the user is being given. If the person can only read the data from the database, or he's allowed to change the data from the database, or if he is even allowed to delete the data from the database. It depends upon the access and authorization of a particular user. But this problem has been removed in the database management system, that multiple people can access and update the data in the database, which is not possible in the file processing system, right? Next drawback is security issues. Now, security was another big concern. There were no proper access control mechanisms no centralized authentication or authorization system, meaning anyone with access to a file could modify or delete it, which is extremely dangerous, right? This lack of security could lead to data breaches. However, in database management system, it provides access control mechanisms ensuring only authorized users can view or modify specific data. I just explained this in the previous drawback. Next one is concurrency problem. Now, another issue was that multiple users couldn't update a file at the same time. If two employees edited the same file simultaneously, it could lead to data corruption or data loss, right? However, database management system supports multiple users accessing and modifying the data simultaneously without conflicts while ensuring data consistency. All right. Next one is no backup and recovery mechanism. Now, in case of accidental deletion or a system crash, FPS did not provide any automatic recovery option, right? If a file was lost, the data was gone forever. However, DBMS includes automated backup and recovery features protecting data from accidental loss or system failures. Alright, next is data dependency. Each file was directly dependent on the programs that accessed it. If the file structure changed, all related programs had to be modified as well, making maintenance extremely difficult. Because as we just discussed, of course, the data is going to be dependent on one another, right? So if the file structure is being changed, see, for example, if a payroll software was programmed to read employee data from a text file with a specific format, and let's say someone added a new column to the file, the program might fail or produce incorrect results unless it was manually updated to handle the new structure, right? So if there's any change in the software, then in that case, the entire structure had to be manually updated. However, database management system separates data from application programs, so changes to data structure don't require modifying all related programs. If you're changing one table, then only that table is being modified. It does not actually affect the other tables that are present in the database if done correctly, right? If you're using wrong queries and if it is not being done or not being updated properly, then obviously it's going to affect all the other tables, right? But if it is done correctly, if proper queries are being used, then in that case, if you're changing one table or adding or deleting one column, then it does not modify the entire database. All right. Next is the scalability issues. Now, as the volume of the data grows, managing files becomes slow and inefficient. Searching, inserting, and updating records in large files takes more time compared to database management system. So, FPS simply couldn't handle large amounts of data efficiently, right? However, database management system efficiently handles large amounts of data by optimizing storage and retrieval processes, making it highly scalable. Alright, because of all these drawbacks, the need for a better solution arose, leading to the development of database management systems. Unlike file processing system, database management system provides data consistency, security, easy data retrieval using SQL, better data sharing, concurrency control, and backup and recovery features. And that's why today we rely on databases instead of traditional file systems, right? So if you found this explanation helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments if you want more such topics covered. See you in the next video.